I, 42M, paid the price for my infidelity, and the pain still lingers as if it were yesterday. In 2007, I became a manager of a retail store. Having very limited English skills, being undocumented, and never having held a managerial position before presented a significant challenge for me. I had only been in the United States for approximately 4 years. My education was restricted to high school, and prior to this role, I worked in fast food, did minimal construction work, and engaged in underwater tasks, always being paid in cash. Having the chance to secure a job that many in my circumstances only dreamt of was an incredible opportunity. However, it was tough. Employees would talk behind my back, which made it difficult because I didn't comprehend much, but I did my utmost with what I had. The stress led to a severe panic attack that landed me in the hospital. In my absence, they assigned someone named Lula, not her real name, to fill in for me. A few days later, she came in with her family to check on the store, and I was working that day. She introduced herself, and we immediately connected. We enjoyed each other's company. A few months passed, and the store closed down. I was transferred to the same location where she worked. I didn't work with her for long before we began dating around August 2007. She was 19, and I was 24. I was inexperienced in many ways, while she possessed extensive knowledge. Even though she was an immigrant herself. Most of the people I worked with were fellow immigrants like me, afraid of the outside world, lacking in social interactions, and when we did socialize, it was typically within the same groups. Life was somewhat more challenging back then, lacking the technology we have today. However, my familiarity with computers and the internet helped. She taught me a great deal and brought me into her social circle. Her friends became my friends, and her sisters felt like my sisters. Even her family recognized me, and I was genuinely happy. However, there was a significant difference between us. She was Muslim, and I identified as a new atheist, previously Catholic. At the time, I didn't know much about her religion. These discussions can be challenging, but they are necessary to share my experience. Back then, I had minimal exposure to any Muslim individual. She was essentially the first. The interaction fascinated me as I was learning something entirely new, yet we disregarded the differences at that moment. Our relationship blossomed, and it was extraordinary. But a similar immigration law went into effect in the county where I lived. People began to leave, and fear permeated our community. Everyone was scared. Given my circumstances and the restrictions her religion imposed, our relationship became untenable. We discussed this on numerous occasions as our connection deepened. She kept me hidden from her immediate family. Only her sisters were aware of me. I did not possess a driver's license and had been driving without one. The store was located about an hour from my home, and under the new law, I could not risk driving, so I requested a transfer to a store closer to my residence. This made it even more difficult for us to see each other. She could only manage to sneak out once or twice, rarely on weekends, only on weekdays. We maintained this arrangement for a couple of years. It was usually the same, but the majority of the time was challenging. Eventually, I obtained my license and a different car. I was earning more money than I ever imagined and was living well. But alone, that was how I felt. I felt arrogant. Then someone else entered the picture. Deborah, 22 years old. I remember being in New York with Lula when I received a call from Deborah, who was 22. I even mentioned this to Lula, remarking on how unusual it was. Deborah was a coworker and a notably different person. I was tasked with driving her home a few times, and that's how it began. After working together for a few months, I made the decision to cheat on Lula. At that time, I didn't care. I liked Deborah more, and she had more time to spend with me. It was a frigid December in 2009, during one of the major storms we experienced. A couple of days later, I chose to end things with Lula, but I withheld the reason. We were already drifting apart. I still had feelings for her, but the distance and limited time together, combined with my desire to settle down, made it complicated. She was younger and unable to marry me, so, like a complete jerk, I hurt her. We went no contact for a while, with one exception when she visited the store. We went out for a meal, and she asked if I was seeing someone else. I lied and said no. 4 months elapsed after that encounter, and everything seemed fine. We had so many good times together. It was the best decision I ever made. I felt on top of the world. Unfortunately for me, Karma had not yet come knocking. Lula was distraught, crying, while I was reveling like a fool with my new conquest. The job itself was terrible. The other managers despised me, and while my coworkers liked me, it was a hostile work environment filled with chaos. I witnessed a lot of unsettling incidents. I was ready to leave. I had a new job lined up, interviews had been conducted, and I was set to become a manager in another store. I had my new girlfriend, a new car, and a new job. Then one morning, I had a disagreement with the store manager, who kicked me out of the store, falsely claiming I used inappropriate language and demanded I put in my 2-week notice. I didn't care, so I complied. However, when the background check was completed, they revealed that the information I provided did not match their records. Thus, no new job for me. A week later, after the 2-week notice had passed, Deborah called to tell me it was over. She had decided to return to her previous boyfriend. I was devastated. Then Lula reached out, asking how I was doing, so I shared the truth with her. I confessed that I had cheated on her just days before the breakup, that I started seeing someone else without her knowledge, and that I lied about having another relationship. She was heartbroken, she was upset, and I caused her pain. At that moment, I recognized the gravity of the situation. I had messed up. Even months later, I kept this from her. I thought that by breaking up with her, I might validate my infidelity. I believed that if I hid the truth, everything would be fine. I was sorely mistaken. I found myself unemployed, without the person I had a decent relationship with even with the distance, and instead, I ended up with someone who discarded me like I had done to Lula. I tried repeatedly to reconcile with Lula, but she deserved better. She turned me down for very valid reasons. I was a cheater. I had cheated my entire life. I tricked my way into jobs, pretended I was fine, deceived myself, lied to everyone, and betrayed her friends, family, and even my parents. I caused her pain and I continuously apologized, but we never got back together. Yet, guess who I ended up with? Yes, Deborah. I pleaded with her, like the coward I was. Perhaps she felt pity for me because I was broken. Our relationship lasted a few months, but it ultimately failed. The fairy tale had ended. I fell into a series of low-paying jobs, working under the table, in fast food, doing whatever I could to earn a living. Eventually, I began working as a sales associate in a retail store where I knew how to sell. As life progressed, I felt completely alone. I didn't want to enter another relationship. I had no money, no charm, nothing. I was being paid the lowest rates and fell into a deep depression. It was tough. During that time, I often wondered how Lula was doing. If I felt this way, I could only imagine how she felt. We needed to move on, and years passed. I started dating another woman from my home country. In fact, I had met her while I was still with Lula, and she was pleasant. At the time, I had no intentions beyond friendship. However, the relationship did not meet my expectations. She became jealous and possessive, never allowing me to communicate with anyone else and always accusing me of texting other people. Even if I had wanted to, the only person I truly wanted to talk to was Lula. So, in December 2012, after a year of dating, I ended the relationship. She continued to pursue me, and we ended up as friends with benefits. She became pregnant, but we were no longer together. She wasn't my girlfriend, and it was purely physical. I pondered how this could have happened. During this time, Lula contacted me to inform me of a mutual acquaintance's passing, which led to the news of my impending fatherhood. She was devastated. Even years after our breakup, in 2013, 4 years later, she cried and felt sorrowful about my becoming a father. She understood that everything was permanently over, and so did I. She still cared for me and had concealed her feelings all that time. Despite the immense pain I caused her, she still held love for me. I requested to meet her again, but she declined. I had hurt her again. She blocked me on all social media, wiped all our pictures, and destroyed all gifts. It was complete obliteration. She told me never to contact her again. However, in 2016, as I prepared to rectify my immigration status, I found myself thinking about her and searched for her. I discovered her on LinkedIn. I didn't have any recent information about her, but I wanted to share my situation. Without regard for her wishes, I reached out. She was courteous, but when I asked for her phone number to speak with her directly, she exploded with valid anger. "What do you want from me? Why are you reaching out now when I'm planning a wedding? You're from so long ago." I became defensive, and further comments led to an argument. Since then, we have not conversed. There's more, but I need to go to bed.